From the moment she stepped into the building, people barely noticed her, just another janitor sweeping floors no one cared about. But hidden beneath the plain uniform was a story that didn't belong in hallways filled with gossip and polished shoes. The CEO, known for his arrogance, rarely looked at her twice, until the day he tossed out a challenge meant only to humiliate her. A helicopter sat on the rooftop, blade still and silent, as he laughed at the thought of a janitor even touching it. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that she carried a truth powerful enough to shatter his pride forever. She arrived every morning before sunrise, long before the executives rushed through the glass doors and long before the CEO appeared with his polished shoes and practiced confidence. The building felt different at that hour, quiet, cold, and honest. She used that silence to breathe, to gather herself, to remember why she was here. To everyone else, she was simply the woman with the mop, the one who moved silently from floor to floor, unnoticed except when someone needed a spill cleaned or a forgotten trash bin emptied. The CEO ruled the company like a kingdom built on status. He believed power came from titles, suits, and bank accounts. To him, a janitor was nothing more than the lowest rung on the ladder, a reminder of where he would never allow himself to fall. His arrogance filled every corridor, and his employees learned quickly, impress him or be invisible. She chose invisibility. It was safer that way. But every now and then, the CEO's gaze lingered on her just long enough to reveal his contempt. Maybe it was the way she walked with calm confidence instead of shrinking. Maybe it was how her eyes held no fear, only quiet strength. Something about her bothered him, though he couldn't explain why. Rumors began to stir among the staff. Some whispered that she spoke too intelligently to be a janitor. Others noticed the precision in her movements, the discipline in her posture, the way she observed everything without speaking. Still, no one dared to ask who she really was. They were too busy staying out of the CEO's line of fire. And high above them, on the rooftop, the helicopter waited, a symbol of wealth, power, and everything she supposedly didn't belong near, until the day he decided to use it to embarrass her. The moment began like any other morning, yet something in the air felt sharper, heavier. She moved through the lobby with her usual quiet grace, but the employees sensed an unusual stir on the top floors. Whispers traveled down the elevator shafts faster than the machines themselves. The CEO was in one of his moods, the kind where he needed someone to belittle just to feel taller. By the time she reached the executive level, a small crowd had already formed near the staircase leading to the rooftop. They weren't there for her, not yet. They were there for the spectacle the CEO seemed determined to create. He stood near the glass railing, back straight, chin raised, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from knowing no one would dare question him. When he saw her step out of the elevator, his smirk appeared instantly as if he had been waiting for this very moment. He called her over with a gesture sharp enough to cut. People turned, their expressions shifting with uncomfortable curiosity. They didn't know what was coming, but they knew it wouldn't be fair. That much was predictable. What no one expected was the sheer audacity of what he said next. He pointed toward the rooftop door, toward the silent helicopter resting above them like a monument to his wealth, and made his challenge loud enough for every ear nearby to catch. The employees froze. Some exchanged glances filled with pity, others held in awkward laughter. To them, his challenge wasn't a real test, it was entertainment. A janitor near a helicopter? The idea itself seemed absurd. The CEO enjoyed that reaction. He thrived on it. To him, she was just another nobody he could push around without consequence. But she didn't respond the way he expected. She didn't tremble or stutter or lower her gaze. Instead, she paused, taking in the scene with calm calculation. The elevator hum, the shifting weight of watching eyes, the CEO's smug posture. She absorbed it all. Her silence unsettled him, though he hid it behind arrogance. He stepped closer, ensuring everyone could see the imbalance between them. His tailored suit contrasted sharply with her work uniform. His expensive watch glinted in the sunlight, while her hands held nothing but a utility cloth. The crowd saw only an obvious difference in status. What they didn't see was the depth of experience behind her stillness. Upstairs, the helicopter sat like an untouched throne. Its metallic body gleamed, reflecting the city skyline. To the employees, it was a symbol of the CEO's wealth and his untouchable status. But when her eyes lifted to the rooftop, there was no awe, only recognition, a trace of familiarity that flickered too quickly for anyone to notice. The CEO continued to taunt her, feeding off the tension, making sure every word stung. Yet as he escalated his mockery, something began shifting among the employees. Her composed demeanor challenged their assumptions. The more she remained unfazed, the more uncertain they became. Why wasn't she reacting like they expected? Why wasn't she intimidated? Slowly, the crowd's amusement faded into intrigue. And in that growing silence, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary janitor, and the CEO's cruelty had just awakened a story he was nowhere near ready to face. The rooftop door swung open as a gust of wind swept across the concrete as she stepped out, the crowd trailing behind her in hesitant silence. The helicopter stood tall, blades still, cockpit glinting in the morning sun. The CEO followed closely, savoring every second of the spectacle he believed he was orchestrating. He imagined the embarrassment that would soon unfold, a janitor fumbling, panicking, backing away while everyone watched. But she didn't hesitate. Her eyes scanned the aircraft with a confidence that didn't belong to someone who merely cleaned floors. It was the kind of confidence that came from years of familiarity, the kind that couldn't be faked. She approached the helicopter with the quiet steadiness of someone returning to an old skill long hidden. A murmur rippled through the group. Something was wrong with this picture. Janitors didn't walk like that, not toward a machine that required precision, training, and nerve. The CEO barked out another taunt, trying to recontrol the moment, but his voice faltered when she placed her hand on the helicopter's frame as though greeting an old friend. She slipped into the pilot seat with effortless grace, her movements smooth, measured, exact. The employees exchanged uncertain looks. The CEO's smugness wavered for the first time. Then the sound erupted, the unmistakable rapid clicks of switches, the steady hum of systems powering up. She knew every control, every sequence. The cockpit came alive in her hands. The CEO stepped back, shock widening his eyes. The once silent gathering erupted in astonished whispers. She eased the collective lever upward and the blades began to turn. Slowly, powerfully, the helicopter lifted off the ground, rising with controlled precision. She maneuvered it with flawless technique, circling above the rooftop in a display that erased every assumption the CEO had ever made about her. When she landed, soft and steady, the silence around her was absolute. Only then did he understand the truth that shattered his arrogance. He had tried to humiliate a janitor, but what stood before him was a highly trained former pilot who knew far more than he ever would about real strength, real discipline, and real identity. When the helicopter settled on the rooftop, its blades slowing to a gentle halt, the gathered employees stood frozen, not out of fear, but out of awe. The woman they had overlooked for months stepped out of the cockpit with the calm dignity of someone who had carried far heavier burdens than a mop and bucket. Her uniform suddenly seemed too small for the truth it had been hiding. The power dynamic everyone had accepted so blindly shifted in an instant. The CEO, who moments earlier had basked in his own arrogance, now found himself stripped of the confidence he wore like armor. His expression revealed what he could no longer deny. He had mocked someone whose experience far exceeded his own understanding. The challenge he thought would expose her incompetence had exposed his own ignorance instead. He could no longer hide behind status or superiority. The truth had leveled the ground beneath his feet. The employees looked at her differently now, with respect, guilt, and admiration. They realized how easily people judge based on uniforms, roles, and assumptions. They had watched her sweep hallways without ever wondering who she was before this job, or what extraordinary life she may have lived. And now, confronted with the glimpse of her past, they saw the quiet strength she had carried all along. She didn't boast, didn't seek revenge, didn't deliver a triumphant speech. She simply walked past the man who had belittled her, carrying a calm that spoke louder than any confrontation. True strength, after all, never needed an audience. As the crowd dispersed, each person carried an unspoken lesson with them, a reminder that respect is not earned by titles, wealth, or power, but humanity. And the next time they passed someone invisible in their daily routine, they would remember this moment. Because behind every ordinary uniform may lie an extraordinary story, one capable of turning arrogance into silence and ignorance into reflection. And perhaps the real question we must all ask ourselves is,